Hi, I'm Brent. Today I'm with Dave Chenery, who's Head of Product Development for Whiteline here in Australia, which is obviously a global brand these days. But what we're talking about is the Subaru Levorg. Now, this particular model previously has only been available in Japan and some parts of Europe, but now it's available here in Australia. Unfortunately, it's not available in the US. And what we're going to do is have a talk about what the differences are and differences that are not between the current model WRX. And what you can see behind me over here is a current model WRX, and that particular model is a good benchmark of what you can expect to understand as being the difference between these two cars. Remember, these cars, the Brett's been on sale in Australia now for a couple of years. Our R&D vehicle has had a lot of work done on it with a lot of testing as the production platform for Whiteline. So Dave's been here today doing some measurements and specifications checking on this particular model to see what is the same and what is different to the WRX. And there's a couple of little key things that we've found, but I'll let Dave talk about some of these topics that you've found. So what's some of the things that is different? I mean, that's probably the easiest one because a lot's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, generally when it comes to bushings, a lot of these are the same as the current MI15 WRX. When it comes to differences, the first thing we found is on the rear differential, the front support bracket, they've gone to the steel pressed metal bracket, welded, whereas the WRX, the 15, used to have the alloy bracket. It still comes with that, same as the STI. So that's the first thing we found. Geometrically, everything looks fairly similar. Bar size is the same as the WRX at 20mm diameter. They've gone to a rear electric park brake system on the back.
And the other interesting thing is this particular model is the Spec B.
Yep.
So it comes factory standard with replacement springs and Bilstein shocks. Now, we don't know yet if the spring rate is the same as WRX. You would assume that possibly being a Levorg and the estate wagon type body that carries a higher load in the rear may have a stiffer rear spring rate. But one of the things that Dave commented on when he was comparing is the similarity between the STI and the WRX range of models. Let's be honest, we know they're on a common platform now, whereas STI's got the old 2.5 litre EJ series engine, WRX has got the 2 litre FA series engine.
Yep.
But the spring rates and the shock rates were almost identical, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to the STI and the WRX, the rear OEM dampers are almost identical in damping rate. When it comes to the spring rates, there was a slight variation between the two, but it's pretty negligible. One would assume on this being a state wagon or station wagon that we would expect the spring rate to be slightly higher than what we would find on the VA STI and the WRX, but we won't know until we get it out. Generally on the STI and the WRX rear dampers, the damping rate is fairly soft on that comparatively to what I'm probably going to expect to find with the Bilstein dampers. So it'll be interesting to get them off, get them on the dyno and have a look and see where they're actually at.
The other thing is we commented on is that obviously the front spring rate and damper rate on an STI and a WRX is different.
Yes.
Because it's a more of a sporty handling car. Never compared it, but I would imagine the FA engine and the EJ engine might be a little bit different in its mass.
Yes,
so therefore they're going to carry a bit more weight in the front end. But also, we're talking about springs a lot now because Whiteline have obviously released a limited range of replacement springs. So you want to tell us a little bit more about what the difference is and why people would consider those as opposed to what is more commonly assumed as a lowered spring to make the car look better. But these springs, I mean, I've road tested it in my current model WRX now, and the guys here in the workshop have actually, one guy here actually owns a WRX which is standard springs and shocks, and he drove it last night and he come back, he couldn't believe the difference, how much better they were. So tell us what you think people would come to expect if they replace the new Whiteline springs with the current model VA chassis, STI and WRXs.
Well, what we would expect is we've gone specifically for ride handling and not necessarily just drop height. We haven't done predominantly what a lot of other people do, and they'll drop the car a predetermined height. So it might be a 1-inch drop or a 30mm or 40mm drop on a lot of vehicles. What we've done is we've actually tailored to suit the open length and closed length of the dampers on each vehicle. So what we found actually on the VA STI is the drop is quite mild. It's only 15mm, but if we go any more than that, you've essentially got a vehicle that's just compressed and riding on the bump stop all the time. The damper struggles to actually work with it. Same on the back of the STI, we've only gone a mild drop, whereas the WRX we've gone a slightly larger drop on the rear because they're 20mm higher than the STI VA, and we basically just packaged that with our sway bars and got a nice handling package. Only a slight increase in rate, not super stiff, but we've gone for that sort of variable rate spring where we can get a nice feel but good control.
I'm going to chuck something in. Let's quickly come over here. We've got an STI here at the moment. Let's quickly run over here with my camera. And you can see this is the current model STI, and you can see this is sort of like the ride height that some people look for. Sometimes I want it a little bit lower, depending on what the application. I haven't even stuck my head under the back to see if this is standard ride. It looks pretty original to me. Jesse, has this got standard springs and shocks in it or not? Yeah, so this is all original. So with the replacement Whiteline ones, you would notice them to be a little bit lower, wouldn't you, Dave? But not slammed, because as they get a lot lower, the ride quality absolutely turns to shit. So I'm pleasantly surprised at the difference. I actually drove the STI road test car Whiteline a couple of months ago with the replacement springs in it, and I was quite impressed at the difference. So let's go back to the Levorg, because everybody wants to know about the Levorg, and we'll just talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we've noticed. Now, interestingly, the current model STI has an upper arm which is aluminium, and it's really interesting that Subaru has still stuck with the steel upper arm on the Levorg as well as on the WRX. Everything else is pretty common, but also Subaru from a manufacturer's point of view started to add a lot more stiffening components in their chassis. We're not really too sure why they were to make the car handle better, because possibly they need to add more linking components. And you'll notice up across the top here there's a brace that goes between the rear suspension pickups and bolts to the bottom of the chassis, which is where the wheel well is. Of course, the other small thing is Levorg's got a standard single outlet rear muffler, as opposed to WRX has got twin outlets. But let's have a quick look up the front. And you'll notice that Subaru, again, on the Levorg as the WRX, it's got this chassis stiffener. So from your point of view, from an engineering point of view, why do you think Subaru have done that?
Well, they've obviously tried to triangulate the front cross member back to the chassis as well and give it a lot more strength. I have driven these with them off, and you can notice the difference. They're only a small pressed metal steel bracing, but the difference it makes just in that feel within the steering, not necessarily the handling, but it's more the steering feel that you can notice when these are on it.
I think also it's because the location of the lower control arm is a lot lower, so when the car's accelerating and braking, there's a lot of mechanical force, because this is what resists the mass of the car slowing down and accelerating when you're braking and going faster. And the further this is away from the body, the more mechanical advantage it has. So of course, as you drop this down, there's a tendency for it to twist and move backwards and forwards, whereas this bracket here obviously would resist that and transfer that load, whether it's under tension or under compression, back into the front engine cross member, which is obviously a very, very strong component, and that's bolted directly to the front chassis rails. But also interestingly, Subaru have gone to this Heim joint. So you want to explain the difference between a Heim joint and a normal rubber joint on some of the early model Subarus, which were hydraulic filled and prone to problems, whereas these are actually...
Generally, what they've got here is they've got like a ball socket that sits in a nylon cup, and then it's encased in rubber, so it's all integrally bonded inside each other. What this does, it gives you like a solid component inside a rubber bonded component, but gives you that ability to actually rotate freely and not actually have to rely on the rubber to give and deform. So
there's less stiction.
Yeah, there's less stiction within the bushing, but also you've got a bushing that's firmer, but because they use a rubber casing around the outside, it's enough to absorb those small things like cat's eyes, bumps that you get on freeways, low input frequency.
So that'll reduce, that'd be good in NVH, because obviously you got a really stiff bush in this front joint, and you go over a joint in the road, if it's a stiff bush, it feels like the whole dash is going to fall out. So this is something that's quite noticeable. But you also commented the front sway bar is the same diameter as the WRX. So I think that's it for now, but it's a really good, interesting bit of information to know what Subaru is going and where they're challenging with this particular model, because it's a real balance between a vehicle to carry a load in the back, but also a vehicle to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for now. On behalf of Dave Chenery at Whiteline from the R&D, fantastic opportunity to work together. You can follow us on more on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter and Instagram. Go to whiteline.com.au and search the vehicle, or go to mrtperformance.com.au. You can put in keywords and search the vehicle there as well. We'll take a lot of photos and link it to the bottom of this video channel so you can have a look at it on our Facebook page. Thanks again, Dave.
No worries, see you, Brett.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.